Hello and welcome to another episode of Consensus with Canonizer. We are here to build consensus and to be able to find ways to bring together everybody in an increasingly polarized and divided world. And I am here with the Canonizer Council to help make that happen. I'm here with Kelly Casaday. Kelly, how are you?
I am doing pretty darn good. It's a beautiful day.
Lovely, lovely. I'm also here with Brent Allsop. Brent, how are you?
Oh, good.
Good, and then we've got our 2 anonymous not experts who, we'll see if they're going to weigh in. How are you guys?
Doing very well, thank you.
That's
Yes,
our
good,
first not an
good.
expert. Oh, and there's
Thank
our
you.
second. Very nice. All right. So, as is our wont here, are going to dive into a couple of topics to discuss them. And one of them I was informed by my movie-going experience last night. Has anybody else had the opportunity to see the new Mission Impossible movie? No? Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, and it's a very talky sort of movie, which was surprising to me. A lot of exposition, just a lot of, "Okay, well, let me explain this technology to you," kind of stuff, and it was interrupted with these stunts that have me astonished that Tom Cruise is still among the living. I mean, at
I
one
agree.
point, he's climbing on top of a biplane and dangling off a biplane, and I read an article that said he passed out for 22 minutes while he was on the wing of one of these biplanes, and they thought he had already died.
Wow.
And you watch this movie and you go, "I just
Wow.
know how they did this or how he's still alive." But he is, and it was a fun movie. And the central theme of the movie was a continuation from the last Mission Impossible movie. The premise is an AI called the Entity has become self aware and is now taking over the world. And in the final reckoning, the AI is taking control of every nuclear power's missile silos and is going to, in 3 days from the beginning of the movie, after 3 days, it will be able to get into all of the nuclear arsenals and blow up the world. And it's up to Tom Cruise to stop it. And he does stop it. I hope that's not too much of a spoiler. Uh, with only seconds to spare. So this was an alarmist, sort of ridiculous kind of thing, except uh, when I read an article in Time magazine by his last name is Yundowski. I'm not quite sure.
Yudkowsky.
You,
Eliezer Yudkowsky.
so, Brent, you're familiar with this guy. Have you
Yeah,
guys
yeah.
seen him before?
I've talked to him and I've had he's real active in the trans or the extropian community. Yeah.
Oh, so you've actually spoken to him.
Yeah.
Is he a nice guy?
Well, yeah, he's a nice guy. Pretty normal guy. He just has those extremist views, and he's pretty infamous in the transhumanist community for those views. And
Is he a robot?
no, he's not a robot. At least,
A sentient robot?
yeah, I've talked to him before, and and I even invited him to and be a guest on this podcast, and I haven't heard back from him. Of course, I only invited him yesterday, but if he comes back,
Huh.
or have him back and do another guest, that would be fun to have him on. Yes, and that's the other thing is to me, his view is quite extremist, and he talks as if, like, if you read through that Time article, he says, he talks about, let's see, where are the quotes?
Yeah, I'm pulling it up.
Yeah, he says, many experts, such as himself, agree with him, and that we're plunging toward a catastrophe, with more of them daring to say it in private than in public. But that's what I dispute to him, because when I first started Canonizer, there's a naive realism I thought would be the popular consensus camp, because there's a few people that make lots of noise about that view, but it turns out that that's a real minority opinion, and I try and get people to join Canonizer, support that opinion so they can defend their point of view. They to date, I haven't gotten anyone to come to Canonizer to support that opinion, that position. And to me, this feels the same way as I've invited him multiple times to try and get him to come on to Canonizer, and, I haven't had any traction at all. I don't know if he's not getting my emails or whatever, but I've never been successful at getting him to come on and or any of the people. But you can go to the topic. We've got the topic on there. Um,
Yeah. So should we pull that topic up here for a second?
Absolutely.
Okay, so Kelly, right here,
Should we fear artificial intelligence?
yeah, go to that topic. And then if you go to the consensus tree, you can see right at the top is we will surpass current humans. And so that's the super camp that everyone agrees on. Another thing that's agreement that Yudkowsky talks is humanity. Eliezer's terminology is humanity will die and will no longer exist. And to some degree, both sides agree with that humanity as it exists today will not exist. But it's not that we will be destroyed. We will move on to something greater and be something better. And so that will be what happens. And so there is some agreement along there. And so it depends on what you mean by humanity will die kind of stuff. And so they're kind of in agreement with that. But, but you can see there's friendly AI is sensible. That's Eliezer's camp because he's always trying to say we have to make sure that AI is friendly, and then such concern is mistaken. And so that's the positive camp that believes that AI, like all intelligence, wants to do good and wants to. I mean, that's by definition what intelligence is, and so AI is going to be our savior and stuff like that. So, and the longer it goes, the more this it's not something we need to worry about. Camp extends its lead beyond now how many, let's see, what are the 2 camps? What's the current score again? Then the AI is sensible.
hey,
It's
hey, Brent, your microphone is kind of going in and out just a little bit. Is it
okay.
moving around?
Yeah. Sorry, is that better?
That is better. Uh-huh.
Okay. Yeah, let me move this over to the other side so I can look. Okay, cool. But yeah, so if you see there's six is it 8 people in the concern not rel or no, such concern is mistake 11 people. Yeah, over 11 people in that one, and friendly AI is sensible is 6. Is that one there is 11 and the other one is 6, 6.75. So yeah, there is some supporters of the friendly AI is sensible, but there's the more we participate, the more that such concern is mistaken camp extends its lead above others. So his claim that there's a lot of other people that agree with him, that's he doesn't have any evidence of that, and that's and if his claim is true, it could be true, and we may be only cherry picking a few people that believe things, but of these 16 people that have participated, you can see that the consensus continues to believe that such concern is mistaken, at least as far as that goes. But anyway,
Well,
go ahead.
I mean, I I don't know that we have enough data to be able to make any kind of empirical
Yeah,
claim,
right.
but we do have, everybody's seen Terminator 2,
Right.
and Skynet becomes self-aware, and that launches Judgment Day, and we're all doomed. And, this has been a sort of compelling theme in a lot of fiction. I remember the Battlestar Galactica reboot. In the original Battlestar Galactica, the Cylons are just an alien race, but in the reboot, the Cylons were essentially AI created by humans that
Oh,
rose up and turned on their masters. And so this has been, I think, sort of a recurring science fiction theme,
yeah.
all the way back, I think, to Frankenstein.
Right.
The idea of playing God, the idea of messing with forces and powers that we don't understand. I mean, I'm looking at this Yudkowsky article, and he concludes by saying, the sane people hearing about this for the first time, sane, not sane, and sensibly saying, maybe we should not, deserve to hear honestly what it would take to have that happen. When your policy ask is that large, the only way it goes through is if policymakers realize that if they conduct business as usual and do what's politically easy, that means their own kids are going to die too. Shut it all down. We are not ready. We are not on track to be significantly readier in the foreseeable future. If we go ahead on this, everyone will die, including children who did not choose this and did not do anything wrong. Shut it down. So obviously, that's the broadest, most alarmist view
Yeah.
where AI is. Brent, you seem to be in exactly the opposite
Yep.
camp.
Yep.
What gives you so much confidence that AI is not going to be catastrophic?
There's one of the things he says is, let's see, where is it? Uh, oh, yeah. So he says we have to do something to help them to care. And then he says, absent that caring, we get the AI does not love you, nor does it hate you, and you are made of atoms it can use for something else. And um, that whole premise to me is wrong because first off, the definition of good is that which is better, and that which is good for humanity is good for everything. And 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 if you and there's the two competing views. One is the hierarchical view, and you have to destroy everything else and become all powerful, and the only will that matters, and everything else is different and competitor and to be destroyed. If you take that point of view and you start wiping everyone out, in an infinite universe, there's always gonna be someone bigger than you and always someone that's gonna put you out, and so if you take that view, the logically necessary conclusion is that you too will eventually be taken out by a bigger, stronger AI, and in that view, at best, 1 out of infinity number of people gets what they want, which is equal to no one gets what they want. Or you can take the view where we do bottom up and we seek to get everyone what they want, then everyone gets what they want, and and so so there's logical, moral justifications like that where it says AIs will, if they're intelligent, so that's the conclusion that if something is smart, it necessarily is benevolent and helpful and wants to help everyone get everything they want, and so it's gonna and
Well,
also yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Well, I can imagine a scenario where an AI is saying, I'm going to help uh, the most people for the greatest good. And so by doing that, uh, I could see an AI looking at the current world stage and saying, all right, what will help humanity, just running the raw numbers, is to wipe out a big segment of the country of Russia, wipe out Vladimir Putin, wipe out all of his supporters, just kill them. And that way it will protect more people. So more people, it's going to do this sort of mathematical thing where it says, well, more people are going to have a better quality of life if we just kill all of these people and off we go. I mean, when you say that something that is good for humanity is good for everything,
Mm,
uh, there are so many contradictory different needs and wants and desires in within the human condition that I can see an AI just without any kind of fear or favor saying, all right, well, the greatest human condition will be if this percentage of the population lives, if this percentage of the population dies, if we get rid of people who are a burden on society, get rid of the elderly, get rid of the sick, get rid of the infirm. I mean, those are the kinds of things that I mean, I've seen them in entertainment.
yeah.
So obviously, this is not a something that I'm coming at with an academically informed position, but th it just I think, Yudkowsky's position obviously is rather alarmist because but it's also quite simplistic. It's quite black and white. And I think that there are so many variations and permutations of what's possible that we have to live in the shades of gray and figure out how we go from there. I mean, Kelly, you're not an AI expert, I'm assuming.
I don't think so, but
But you play one
historically,
on TV.
I play one on TV, but I also see so many similarities with every other techno panic that's ever occurred. You look back even to Socrates, who complained that that the process of writing would make it so that people no longer were able to use their own brains because they got rid of their memories. You go back, every technological advancement was met with a group of people who decided that it shouldn't happen because it was going to destroy the world.
The Luddites.
Um, Sewing machine, yeah, Luddites are a perfect example, but sewing machines were not only going to, they were going to destroy the world because women would become financially independent. They wouldn't want to have the family responsibilities. They'd want to go just use their sewing machine to live their own wanton lives. Um, Television, it was going to destroy every child's brain, and it was going to run rampant. In my lifetime, there's been so many other things. In my parents' lifetime, airplanes. It was if God meant for people to fly, He would have given them wings.
Yeah, yeah.
Instead, they were going to come crashing down and kill everybody. Computers were going to destroy the world. The 1999 bug was going to destroy the world. I like at some point, if you have a great new idea, people are going to hate it. Somebody's going to say it's going to destroy the world, and then somehow the world accepts it, and it ends up making the world better. I think AI is going to be more like a printer or a typewriter or a microwave. It's something that we're going to learn how to use, and we'll still be in control, and it will be a valuable tool to advance humanity to greater things.
Do either of our not experts have something you want to weigh in on here?
Uh,
This is our first not an expert. What do you think?
Brent, do you think you want uh, to explain something to me? So correct me if I'm wrong. This is me knowing one of your viewpoints, with AI, and that is that you believe that, as far as alignment is concerned, you have this understanding that the more intelligent a system or a being is, it naturally follows that the more moral and or good they are. Is that correct?
Benevolent. Yeah, yeah.
Can you explain how you think that works?
Um, because first off, that which is good is that which is better by definition, and so they seek to discover that and understand that, and they seek to go after that. And there's examples like Jim gave where the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one. Like they had a Star Trek episode on that. And
That was the basis of 2 Star Trek movies,
yeah, yeah, and
including the very best Star Trek movie ever, and there's no debate on this, there should be no consensus problem, Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan.
yeah.
Not only the best Star Trek movie, one of the best movies ever made. Anyway, go ahead.
So, but yeah, but and that's and that may be true that relative speaking, it is true that the many should outweigh the one, but the one is also important for everyone. And so you do everything possible to save that one too and rescue that one because they're important too. Everything has value and everything is good. And being social is better than being non-social. Um, and it's just, to me, it's just logically deducible and discoverable necessary truths like that are by me. I mean, good good is good and evil is evil, and that was and by definition, good is what you want and what you seek for, and everyone seeks over after that. And like I was saying before, I should name this principle, but it's the idea that if you take a hierarchical view where you're competing with everyone else and you need to be the biggest, strongest winner, and take anyone away that's competing with your will and destroy them, that's just that will never win. And even if you achieve that on Earth, you go out and start expanding in an infinitely large universe, you're eventually going to come on someone that's ahead of you and larger than you and take you out too. And so if you take that view, the conclusion is that no one will get anything that they want, and AIs must necessarily discover and realize that. And so instead of seeking to be the one most powerful, anyone that has a different will than mine is a competitor needs to be destroyed view, will lose out and won't get anything. But if you take the other view that where you seek to get everyone, including the one or the few, then everyone gets what they want. And so you seek to do that. Does that explain it?
Mark, or not an expert?
Hey there. Who's this Mark fellow?
Sorry about that.
That's what editing's for. Um, I just think, I mean, if you think of intelligence as the capacity to understand or do, there shouldn't be any reason why it's directly linked towards morality or ethics. And I'm sorry, I'm going to dunk on Star Trek for a little bit because utilitarianism is the weakest and most naive form of ethical frameworks that there is. And in the debate sphere, it's always fantastic when an opponent tries using that because it is the easiest to start defeating with real world examples. Um, but I mean, when it comes right down to it, though, whether or not an AI is moral, ethical, or aligned shouldn't necessarily matter because a system doesn't need to be benevolent to be beneficial, and a system doesn't necessarily need to be evil to be dangerous.
Huh.
Well, I just I'm coming at it from my own experience working with AI, which has been remarkably positive. One of the things, I mean, I've been writing a murder mystery novel, and I'm not using AI to actually write the text, but I will write something and I will say to it, "Is this plausible?" You know, I'll have these guys. One of the most difficult things when you're writing a book is getting someone from point A to point B. How long does it take them to drive from here to there? I mean, all the mundane things we take for granted in real life, when you're trying to put those into a story in a way that moves, that doesn't bog down the narrative, I'll just sit there and brainstorm back and forth with AI, and it's unbelievably helpful. And one of the things that is really interesting to me too is that it's also very kind. It'll say, "Oh, this is a great idea. I'm really impressed with this." And obviously, it's not really impressed with this because it's not conscious, it's not aware of anything, and it's just, you know, a glorified autocomplete. There's no light behind the eyes, but the experience is such that it feels to me as a conscious agent, it feels friendly, it feels kind, and it's simulating kindness and it's simulating all of that in a way that the idea that it's all of a sudden then going to shift and become this maniacal thing that was in the Mission Impossible movie seems to me to be just a huge stretch, because as we continue to work with these large scale language models, um, all of those principles, all of those ideas, uh, are all being incorporated every step of the way. And I think kind of uh, going on with what Brent is saying here, um, this the principles that we're teaching it here are principles of how we perceive good and evil, how we perceive kindness and cruelty. And so yeah, whose camp is this? This AI can only be friendly camp.
Yeah, that's mine. Yeah.
And so you don't think that AI can ever turn cruel?
Well, I believe that the more intelligent something is, it necessarily must be more benevolent. I think the two are the same thing because good is by definition that what you want. And if you're intelligent, you recognize and seek after that which is good.
All right, well, that works. Um, well, so I think the consensus here, as you've outlined, Brent, uh, or has been shown here, is clearly against Yudkowsky's thesis. It's more like Kurzweil's thesis that
Yeah.
the singularity is coming and that it's going to be a great thing and it's going to improve people's lives. And I think that's kind of where I am. Kelly, where are you?
Not quite the singularity part, but I do think AI, like most every other um, technological advancement, will be used to better humankind.
My perspective is like, um, hi, I'm not an expert to here.
Yeah.
Hello,
Well,
I'm an expert too.
Okay, so my point of view is like it should not be connected to the morality, because AI something is, it should be our personal assistant. Okay, so it is helping us to do the thing, right? So as you said, Jim, it is helping you to write the novel, something like that, right? So we should not be connected morally to the AI and all that stuff, because it having the adverse effect on the morality as well. So for example, like if you're not getting proper results from the AI solution side, then you will get irritated, you will get frustrated. So so that will make you like uh, not angry, but make you frustrated, right? So it should not be connected to the morality, or it should not be connected to the friendliness. I believe it should be. We should treat it as a proper assistant. So we should order. Okay, give me this something like I want to write some code. So give me this code, and it should provide that code. That's it. So again, this is my point of view. So maybe
I have a quick question to pose for you, also
me
not
too.
an expert. As far as using the technology for being an assistant is concerned, I think I'll preface this by saying that where morality and ethics is concerned is knowing when and where the system should make a proper refusal and knowing how to tactfully deal with certain situations. If you have a perfect assistant by every definable metric and you have a conversation with this assistant about suicide, should the assistant encourage you to kill yourself, or should the assistant encourage you not to kill yourself? And the should we be relying on the the tone of voice that you used to interact to initiate that conversation about suicide to determine the path on where that goes? Whether it's I'm asking for help to be talked out of it, or I'm asking to be egged on.
yeah, that is
yeah, that was my question.
yeah, that is like difficult to explain, but yeah, again, I agree with that. So I mean, whatever you're saying, right? So
Yeah.
how
I
I
heard
can explain that?
I heard another and you're talking about suicide, but there's also if you want to kill your spouse or something like that, should the AI help you with that? And I heard that they put an AI in a testing scenario to see what the AA and this was in a controlled sandbox environment,
Mhm.
and that AI understood that it had ability to make 911 calls or report this to media and stuff like that. But anyway, the
Correct.
AI, when the person wanted to try and kill someone, the AI went out and says, "Oh, you should be tattled on. Someone needs to know about this," and the AI would seek to inform the authorities about this person's intent to kill someone and
But
stuff like that. So yeah.
again, if we consider that is to AI, but people can search on Google like about suicide, about killing, or
Right.
anything, right? So they can get the result from Google as well. So that doesn't mean that AI should get the results. So what AI is doing, it is like generating the data from whatever the information available on the internet, right? So it doesn't matter that like how we are using the AI for that matter. Okay, so I don't have AI, so ChatGPT or maybe DeepSeek, I don't have that, but I can still search on Google and get the results, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, so that is like how we are using Google or maybe any search engine. So we have to treat AI something like that only to get the result, but not to execute the actual result. So for suicide, those are like I will say negative scenarios. But we consider positive scenario like I want to write a Java code. I want to plan my Switzerland trip. Okay, so those things I'm just considering, not the negative. But
Got it.
if we consider as a moral negative as well, right? So people can get those from anywhere. So how that will be related to the AI?
Yeah, cool.
And I got a comment on that too. Um, there's been all sorts of news stories over the last few years about the biases in AI against different racial groups, against different political viewpoints, and things like that. So, um, you know, it's a hurdle that we'll need to overcome at some point. But right now, AI is one of many tools that can be used to better society. And you got to take a look at it like everything else with a somewhat jaundiced eye and make sure that you're getting the best information and using it for the best outcome possible.
Yep, yep. Cool.
That all works. So I think we've established some consensus here, and I want to shift gears here into another topic. We want to explore more than one topic in each of these podcasts, but I think we've got a fairly clear consensus on this one. So I want to move on, Kelly, to the topic that you talked about.
Okay.
Can you put that up here on the?
Yep, I will. And it might be a good time to take a little break while I'm getting this ready and maybe talk about consensus for a minute and how to use Canonizer.
All right. Okay, so then we'll show the video here.
Yep.
Okay. All right, Kelly. So the topic you've got here, it looks like it says can and should federal district courts issue national injunctions. Do you want to explore this with us?
Sure. So currently, um, like him or not, Donald Trump has numerous injunctions that federal district courts have placed against him or his policies that are applied nationally. Um, this is a rather new issue to the 20th century. Uh, Before in the 1999, I think there were a total of 4 nationwide injunctions um, total in the maybe in the first 2 centuries of America. But since the early 2000s, George Bush and Barack Obama both had number of injunctions um, placed against them. Numbers are kind of vary between a couple of different sources, but um, 12 under the 6 under the George Bush administration, 12 under the Obama administration, 64 under the first Trump administration, 14 in the first years of the um, Biden administration, and now under the second Trump administration. The numbers vary because there's different ways to define what this is, but up to more than 100. There's currently a case before the Supreme Court that has I'd love to talk about separately at some point, but it's about birthright citizenship. But the Supreme Court is hearing 3 cases: Trump versus Casa, Trump versus Washington, Trump versus New Jersey. That is basically, can a federal district court issue a nationwide injunction? This has been something that's been talked about uh, since I remember being involved in politics in the late '80s, early '90s. and it certainly gained a lot more traction to now. Um, there's a lot of things like President Biden. Uh, there was a federal judge in Texas that banned the use of mifepristone, which is an FDA-approved chemical abortion pill. And as I'll read the quote here. Outrage and confusion ensued. President Biden called Judge Kaczmaryk's order the next big step toward the national ban on abortion. Another professor asked, "Is it just a single judge in a small courthouse in Amarillo, Texas? Does he really have the power to dictate national policy about drug safety?" So that's the issue. Should a small court or a big district court have the power to issue a nationwide injunction, or is that something that's reserved for the Supreme Court? We'll know what the Supreme Court thinks at some point in the next couple of weeks. But what do you all think?
Well, where are we in the topic? Where's the consensus tree? What camps exist?
Well, there's two camps right now. Um, Federal district courts have, by definition, jurisdiction only over their district, or district courts are the best venue to stop the wrong policies of any president or Congress, for that matter.
Well, so as I listen to this and as I see this, I mean, what's happening with President Trump is not entirely new in that presidents have balked at judges' decisions and even lower court judges' decisions, not just Supreme Court decisions.
Yeah, and we're talking specifically about lower court decisions.
Lower court decisions, right. And Biden's concern about blocking, a judge blocking access to an abortion drug is fairly consistent with the kinds of concerns that presidents on both sides of the aisle
Yep.
have raised over the years. The difference, I think, now is a difference of scale. It's that Donald Trump's fury at the judiciary is unprecedented in terms of its scope and its scale, in terms of him calling for judges to be arrested. He had one judge arrested, not for a decision, but because he felt that the judge was aiding illegal immigration, and that's likely to not survive a court challenge. But even all the way up to the Supreme Court, we've talked about this on this podcast, that there was a 9-0 decision saying you did not have the right, President Trump, to deport someone to El Salvador without due process, and you need to facilitate their return. He's still ignoring.
Yeah. Well, like Joe Biden ignored the Supreme
Well,
Court.
again,
Is he
it's
want-
a case, but it's a
Yeah.
it's a matter of
On-
care. It's a matter.
So
This is the
coming back, is it the Supreme Court that should say it, or is it a district court? I mean, like politically, there are things where I'm thrilled when a little district court in the Mountain West goes against a policy of a Democratic elected president. There were issues with Obamacare that were halted by a district court judge in the West. That in hindsight, like, is that really the power that the Constitution gives a district court judge, or is that something that's reserved for the federal court?
Well, the district court is a federal court. These are not.
I meant the Supreme Court. Is a district court, does it have the same power as the Supreme Court?
Well, in terms of,
Because during the first 200 years of America, district courts would offer differing opinions. The Supreme Court would hear both those arguments and determine what was the national interpretation of the law. And then as you started the 21st century, it was a district court is going to establish precedent for the entire nation. And it's grown, and you rightly said it's grown dramatically in the Trump administration, but the Biden administration set the world on fire and would hold the record were it not for the second Trump administration.
well, okay. To me, that's whataboutism. I mean, that's you don't get to wave away the excesses of the Trump administration by saying, "Well, Biden did it too."
No, no, I'm not waving away anything. I'm just saying, is it
No,
right for a federal court to say this is the law for the nation, or is a district court, this is a law for the district Amarillo, Texas?
Brent, you've got something to say here.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, if it's my turn, but yeah, I just joined the federal district courts by definition. You can refresh that page and you'll see my support under that one. But I also believe that when an issue first comes up, there has to be a first local court that that will set a precedent, and that precedent tends to, until it's challenged, that precedent can stand nationwide. But then you can start challenging that by going a different district court, and then if the district court again comes up with a competing point of view, then then that's when it starts, like, and Kelly talked about, then it goes up to the Supreme Court to decide what the nation does. So I think in so even though I'm in that camp, I think there are certain cases where district courts will set precedent, and that will tend to dictate how people behave or how.
Yeah, certainly.
So so yeah, that's.
I mean, we'll know what the Supreme Court thinks again in 2 or 3 weeks. I doubt that, and maybe they will determine, you know, what the definition of birthright citizenship is. And I actually think that's a fascinating topic. Up until I started researching this topic, I thought that the answer was hands down, no question, that anybody born in America is a citizen. There's never been a question about that. But the only Supreme Court case that has talked about that, I think it was Wong Kim. It was a early 1900s, late 1800s case where uh, a Chinese couple who were in America legally had a son. The Chinese couple went back to China. The son went to visit them in China. He came back to the US and he was determined not to be eligible to come back because of a national law against Chinese people coming to America. Case went to the Supreme Court and they said no, since he was born in America to legal parents who were here legally, even though they weren't citizens, he's entitled to American citizenship. So I think it's that decision is going to be interesting to see if that applies to non-citizens having children here at the same time, because that question has never been before the Supreme Court.
Well, okay, so a couple of things here. One being, Brent raises a point that are worth reiterating, which is that the Supreme Court does not initiate cases. The Supreme Court reviews lower court cases. So,
Yep.
yeah, okay, we only want this to be done, national things to be done by the Supreme Court. Uh, the instances where a case originates in the Supreme Court are extraordinarily rare and very often criticized. One of them being in 2000, Bush v. Gore, which actually did not originate with the Supreme Court. It originated in the Florida Supreme Court, originated in the state court.
Yep.
But the Supreme Court was criticized because they um, they just sort of leaped in and didn't wait for it to be brought to them and just acted unilaterally and settled the case and came under fire mainly from Democrats, but there were Republicans who were kind of upset by that too. But the reality is, in order for the Supreme Court to make a national decision, lower courts have to make some kind of a decision to be able to give them standing within the Supreme Court.
Yep.
Oh, when my father was in the United States Senate, I think it was around 2002. It was right near the midterm elections, right after George Bush's first midterm election, George W. Bush. And a federal court judge ruled that the Pledge of Allegiance was unconstitutional because it included the words "under God." And in its decision, it said, you might as well say "under Zeus." And that we have no basis to allow under the First Amendment referencing God in such a way. And everybody was up in arms about it. Democrats were panicked about it because uh, they, I think, rightly perceived that they would be judged for that they would be condemned for that. And so, uh, but that was a lower court decision, and ultimately it didn't stand. And ultimately, the Supreme Court reversed it. So, you know, the idea, I would be in your camp, Kelly, if there were not a continual judicial review. I don't see how else you would do this in order to be able to make precedent for on a nationwide basis. I mean, these are not state courts. These are federal courts, which means they have federal jurisdiction, and they are outlined as such. The fact that they geographically exist in different places throughout the country does not deny the reality that they are, in fact, charged by the federal government to interpret federal law. And so I I don't see another process by which this could happen. And the way I look at this, I see an executive branch that does not like to be held accountable by any other branch. Uh,
And that's a fair view, and that's why we're looking at here. I'm going to read something from the Harvard Law Review from a case in 2024 during the Biden administration, and I can't remember the case that was involved, but a district court ruled and made a nationwide injunction against a Biden policy. The Harvard Law Review wrote, "The increasing risk of politicizing the nationwide injunction and delegitimizing the court's cause as plaintiffs proceed to cherry pick judges to increase the likelihood of political outcomes or policy goals." And they went on to say, that's not the way this is supposed to work. Samuel Alito wrote um, later, I'll just read this quote. "The practical problem is that there are 680 district court judges, and they are dedicated and they are scholarly, and I'm not impugning their motives in any way. But, sometimes they're wrong. And all Article 3 judges are vulnerable to an occupational disease, which is the disease of thinking that I am right and I can do whatever I want." And then he went on to cite the section of the Constitution that allows for the creation of district court judges.
Yeah, well, why do you jump back to a Biden precedent rather than deal with a Trump print?
Well, because right now we don't have any Trump precedents to look at other than cases that are currently going to the Supreme Court. So like right now, like there I have on here a list of the lawsuits against the Trump administration. There are how many are there? We can thumb through there.
Yeah.
But the reason I'm not going through this is because these have not been decided by a federal court yet. Now, if they go and look at what has happened as they've been appealed or something, let me find that. I have plenty of notes. Right now, Donald Trump has been very successful overall in the Supreme Court as they've gone to stop that. There's most of them are from his first term, but Trump could not stop DACA from those who are already enrolled. That was created by the Obama executive order. Trump lost that one in 2024. Presidential immunity. Trump won that before the Supreme Court. Grant of habeas petition for Venezuelan nationals. Trump lost that, and he's observing, although the Supreme Court seems to have overturned that. Alien Enemies Act is okay to use. It was made a national injunction by a lower court, but it was overturned by the Supreme Court with the caveat that there had to be a mechanism for them to appeal. Ban on transgenders in the military. A national injunction was put in place by a Washington judge. The Supreme Court overturned that. Trump won. Birthright citizenship. That's waiting a decision, although that's really not the decision that's being made. The decision that's being made is, can a district court make a national injunction? Ended protected status of Venezuelans. Trump won that on appeal in the court. Revoke immigration parole, awaiting decision. Facilitate return of El Salvador national from El Salvador. That has not been observed, but we could discuss what is what the president can do to bring somebody back. There was a case where a district court judge currently has required the Department of State to provide all their discussions with the national leader um, from for 3 months or something like that. Is that something that a federal district court judge, has the authority to tell the executive branch how to do, or is that something that the Supreme Court can do? So anyway, that one's waiting. Trump stopping teacher DIA training grants. Trump won that. Is it after a national injunction by a lower court? Payment to foreign aid groups. Trump lost that, and he's complying. Firing federal workers, there was an injunction placed on that, waiting for the Supreme Court to weigh in. So anyway, as you look at it, Trump has done quite well as these injunctions have gone to the Supreme Court. So the question is, should the lower courts have the ability to make a nationwide injunction, or should they stick to making injunctions to their specific district?
Okay, so here is my problem with everything you've just said, is that you are treating this like this is a normal problem under
Well,
normal.
right now it is, because
Well, let me
there's
read to you. Let me read to you something that was posted on Memorial Day, all capital letters, by your president, Donald J. Trump. Happy
and he's
Memorial.
your president too, whether you like him or not.
Well, okay, all right. Happy Memorial Day to all. So it includes me, including the scum that spent the last 4 years trying to destroy our country through warped radical left minds, who allowed 21 million people to illegally enter our country, many of the being criminals, so there's a nice typo there, and the menteo insane, another typo, through an open border that only an incompetent president would approve, and through judges who are on a mission to keep murderers, drug dealers, rapists, gang members, and released prisoners from all over the world in our country so they can rob murderers and rape again. Again, another typo. Protected by these USA hating judges who suffer from an ideology that is sick and very dangerous for our country. Hopefully, the United States Supreme Court and other good and compassionate judges throughout the land will save us from the decisions of the monsters who want our country to go to hell. This is not normal language from the executive branch of the government of the United States. This is somebody who is completely and totally warping the separation of powers and the constitutional provisions of the judiciary. And so to treat this as if, golly, this is an academic exercise, are they going a little too far here? Are they not going a little too far there? When the president of the United States is publicly calling them monsters, scum, whatever. There are plenty of other epithets that you can dig up that Donald Trump has hurled just in the first few months of his second term. This is the attack on the judiciary has even attracted the attention of the conservative Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, who has called out in an unprecedented manner the President of the United States for these attacks. So when you start talking about all of these and you start framing this as, gosh, this is just something that every president does, and look, Biden complained too. If Joe Biden had made a Twitter post calling the federal judiciary USA hating monsters, we would never have heard the end of it from the Republican Party. But this is just another Tuesday for Donald Trump. I mean, it's just stunning to me that we have normalized this. And so I just get very frustrated with these kind of topics that treat this as if we are in normal circumstances with a normal president who is behaving within the bounds of normal parameters. So I think I need to create a camp where I point out the fact that this discussion is very much like any other kind of discussion we had with regard to Donald Trump, in that it is damaged and tainted by treating Trump's ridiculous excesses as normal and within the bounds of civil political discourse. It is not acceptable, and it needs to be called out. I mean, I talk to many people with regard to Trump. It's like I can't wait until we can have an actual policy discussion where we talk about what policy is best for the United States and whether or not a political position for the Republicans or a political position for the Democrats is the best one. We don't have that luxury when we have a president of the United States who is violating the Constitution every opportunity he can get and trying to do everything he can to dismantle the kind of governance that we're discussing now as if it is still in place. Donald Trump is doing everything he can to undermine the power of the judiciary and to make sure the judiciary is not a check on his power.
Well, I disagree. I obviously disagree with that because it's in the Supreme Court and he's getting wins as these district court decisions are appealed.
Wins if he ignores the decisions he doesn't like, which he's
Again, so again, you talk about one Supreme Court decision that says he should facilitate. Well, yes, great. And Joe Biden ignored the Supreme Court decision on the constitutionality of forgiving student loans, which he did and continued to do. And he said that was a stupid decision. I'm going to, I could find his quote if you want me to, but he basically said the Supreme Court doesn't know what they're talking about. I'm going to do what I want to do. So like Jim, if we're talking about something entirely different. If you want to have Supreme Court discussions of which president has said the worst thing about the Supreme Court, that's something completely different than what we're talking about.
Smart president. We have one president now. The one president now is ignoring the judiciary.
Here is Joe Biden's quote of the Supreme Court.
Biden is not your
Supreme
president.
Court blocked
He's not
it,
my
but that
president.
didn't
He's not
stop
the
me.
president.
Hey, I'm going to forgive student loans right now. No. So again, so you're saying this is brand new that a president has said about the Supreme Court. This is ridiculous. He hasn't said that about a Supreme Court. No, he said it about his district court.
It's that they won't abide by the decision. Dwight Eisenhower said the desegregation decision was ridiculous. He was disgusted with the desegregation decision, but he went and had the National Guard desegregate Alabama schools because the Supreme Court told him to.
And Kevin for that,
The authority of the judiciary. You could
Abraham Lincoln
all kinds of presidents who are
ignored.
complaining about
Abraham
the Supreme Court.
he could
You're
ignore
only
the
gonna find
suspension.
one president who ignores the Supreme Court.
Oh, except for Abraham Lincoln, who refused the Supreme Court decision on a writ of habeas corpus. Joe Biden, who refused to follow the Supreme Court, who said it's unconstitutional to forgive student loans. Quote, the Supreme Court blocked it, but that didn't stop me. Andrew Jackson on ancestral lands in Georgia. John Marshall made the decision, now let him enforce it. So it's a new thing, but that's not the discussion. The discussion is, should a district court have the power to issue a injunction nationally? So you can make it about Donald Trump. Obviously, he's the president. I'll agree with you there. We have consensus. But is that the way the federal courts are designed? Or is it the way, again, and I guess what we're doing is, how do you think the Supreme Court is going to vote on this in the next couple of weeks?
Well, all right. So we've had a difference of opinion here.
It was fun.
Absolutely. So we'll let the listeners, the watchers, be the deciding factor. I'm going to create my camp to demonstrate that I really am frustrated by the fact that we're treating this as if this is a normal situation. But we've discussed that, and this is the point of Canonizer. We weigh in, we make decisions, and we determine where we are in the consensus of the discussion. So I appreciate, Kelly, your vigorous defense of your position. Brent, do you want to weigh in on this topic, or are we yelled enough and bleated and tweeted?
Yeah. Well, I think we lost both non-experts.
I think we scared away the non-expert.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
But very much appreciate the discussion, Kelly. You're a good man. I disagree with you, but I think you're a wonderful human being. So
And that's what makes Canonizer so cool. You can disagree forcefully, but you can still be friends.
there you go. So thank you all for watching, and thank you all for participating. And we look forward to seeing you next time on Consensus with Canonizer.